I'll be honest. The new Apex talent system, I feel like I just haven't looked into it enough. I don't know enough about it yet. I really feel like I haven't really looked even into my own class's Apex talent shit, and how it's going to work and what the talents are for Death Knights. So here we go. A nice little overview. How good are the new Apex talents in Midnight for your class? Let's see what Marcellian and Flame have to say.
Your favorite class is getting new toys in Midnight. Apart from the major reworks, which you may or may not be aware of if you have been playing WoW for the past year, you will also have a new type of talents that will spice up your gameplay called Apex talents.
Ooh.
What are these talents exactly, and how much will they change the specs going into 12.0?
By the way,
it's been
like,
quite a while since an expansion.
real quick, just like, does anyone feel like we're going down the same fucking rabbit hole again where Blizzard's overcomplicating the talent trees again? Like, I really did like the Dragonflight remake because I felt like we got a little bit too simple, especially like Mists of Pandaria time. But I think the Dragonflight talent trees were great. And then we added hero talents. And now we're going Apex talents. And next we're going to get, like, I don't know, dildo talents for whatever. I feel like they're adding. They continue to add on to this. And we're just continuing to get, we're entering the recomplication of talents again. And at the end of the day, like, no matter how much they add, people just go on Wowhead and look up the best build. So does it matter? I don't know. I just think Dragonflight was really good. It was a nice little reset to the talent trees. And I didn't think it needed to go beyond that. But here we go, Apex talents. On top of your hero talents. On top of your other shit talents. Okay.
Expansion added anything resembling the old talent rows that we used to get more
Mega
than 15
talents,
years
yeah, ultra
ago,
talents.
with new spells, abilities, and builds being activated by them to freshen up a spec or a class as a whole. I remember when Fury Warrior moved into the Burning Crusade and got the Rampage ability as a capstone talent. For that time, this ability was like nothing else Warrior had, and it gave you the feeling your spec will be upgraded with the new expansion.
Burning Crusade did a great job adding a final talent to everyone's trees, man. We got a lot of cool ass abilities in Burning Crusade. Same with Legion. Because of the Legion legendaries, we got a lot of really good abilities in that expansion too.
In Wrath of the Lich King, Fury didn't receive a new spell, but
and I guess
rather the
Shadowlands.
passive Titan's Grip that changed the spec theme forever, being to this day the only spec in the game that can dual-wield two-handed weapons. There's a good reason why I chose to use this situation as an example and not to compare modern WoW to classic WoW, but rather to use as a point of reference. With how the game evolved over the last...
No more talents bring back glyphs. I've been saying it forever, Eggsy. I totally agree. I thought the whole hero talent thing should have just been like a revamp of the glyph system. Because I always thought the glyph system was awesome. I love the customizations it brought. And I thought that was like the real way to RP your class. Right? Like if you wanted to be a hunter, like a shadow hunter, kind of like Sylvanas, you could have put in some glyphs and made yourself look that way, or changed the way your arrows look. Or like back in the day, as a mage, you wanted to be funny, you had penguin people instead of sheeping them. Like the glyph system had a lot of promise, and then Blizzard kind of just dropped it. They don't really use it anymore. I think that could have been like, the remake of the glyph system to me should have been the hero talent trees. Instead, we got hero talent trees.
6 expansions, it's been more than 10 years since we actually got new talents in the real sense. Mists of Pandaria introduced the mobile skill tree of pick one of 3 talents with 6 rows,
yeah, this
while
was
Warlord
this
of
was
the
an
Draenor added the
oversimplification.
7th row. Ever since then, up until Dragonflight, we had 21 talents that occasionally changed with some reworks, but we didn't really get new stuff in the sense of new content.
No, yeah.
Dragonflight reworked the entire talent trees and had new nodes, but it was like a whole new game when it happened. It was a great change that we championed for years, since no RPG should ever suffer the Excel talents of mob. It also changed what talents meant, since with Dragonflight's rework, which we still carry to this day, the talent tree is a weird combination of core abilities and passives. Without the like, a spec would not be playable. This made it, and still makes it, kind of hard to feel like the talent tree of old, or a proper skill tree at all, considering how a lot of spells and passives that you get also just pop into your spellbook separately from your talent tree, diluting the purpose of the current system.
Yeah, but I think Dragonflight's talent system is one of the best we've had in a while. I think I look back on it and I think it was a really good remake of them. Dragonflight overall was a good remake of a lot of systems, profession systems, obviously the flight system, we got dynamic flying, and then the talent system. It was a good foundational expansion. And I think that was a really good talent tree. We didn't have to go really beyond that, but we did.
Muddling the waters with core spells in the talent tree needing points to be taken, but also arbitrarily popping in your spellbook as you level up, offsets the design intent of the talent tree, being a combination of the old talent system and also your class trainer that lets you learn your class, unlocking spells and abilities one at a time as you level up. It doesn't do any one thing amazingly well, and it tries to do too much of everything at once, making in the end a system without a clear direction or purpose or effect that in turn makes it hard for the player to understand what it is supposed to do or add to their current class, and it ends up turning into an either confusing system or more likely a set and forget or a copy and paste the loadout and never bother with it ever again type mechanic.
But when were talents ever not that? I've been playing since vanilla, and I remember going and trying to figure out what the best talent build was. And like the way I used to do it back then, honestly, is I remember you'd go find the guy who's like really good on your server, because back then there was no cross server shit, but you try to find like the best hunter on your server. And then you'd inspect him and then try to match his talent tree. Like, that was how you did it a lot of times. The whole adage about just going and looking up the best talent spot, the best talent makeup for your class is something people have always done. Rarely is there a choice. A lot of times the choice might be like, okay, I'm going to run, I'm going to do PvP instead of, I'm going to go do a battleground instead of a raid, or I'm going to go do Mythic Plus instead of a raid, right? So you swap out some talents maybe for more AoE damage than single target damage. That kind of shit gives you a little bit of choice. But you're still really swapping between what is considered to be the best for that specific type of gameplay. So I don't know if there's ever really been a choice. It's always just been spec into the meta.
This eliminates the choices a player would have to make and also engage with, and eliminates their interaction with the system as a whole, since it's just not clear what they're supposed to do with it. It's not talents, because you get core spells, generators, and spenders for your rotation that the spec needs to function, but also not an isolated system in and of its own, because those same type of spells and abilities automatically pop in your spellbook as you level up, totally separate from the talent tree. And because the core stuff exists there, it cannot be a real talent tree, skill tree, or progression tree, since what it brings is not unique from what you passively get by just leveling your character anyway, making it feel like it didn't have enough space to hold everything in it, or it wants to really make sure you won't avoid picking certain things by forcing them inside of your spellbook, or specs just have way too many things that they need to function that cannot be made mandatory in the talent tree, or it would really make it seem there is no real choice anywhere.
Yeah.
All of this is to set up.
There are a lot of spots in the tree where there isn't a real choice. It's just an illusion of choice, because you gotta get that interrupt or something.
The stage for what the Apex talents are, could be, or should be, and how they address classes in Midnight. There will now be 40 specs in the game, and each gets 3 nodes as part of the Apex talent system, with one of those nodes being a 2-pointer, so a total of 120 nodes or 160 talent point locations to spend in the entire game. For obvious reasons, I won't go over all of them, but I will break them down into 3 categories and give you my thoughts on them after playing all 40 specs in the game with all of the Apex talents and hero talents combinations.
Ooh.
Once the new expansion hits and you start to level in Midnight, you will work towards unlocking 10 new talent points, which will be spread throughout your class tree, your hero talent tree, and your spec tree. Respectively, you will get 4 new spec talent tree points, which coincide with the number of Apex talents that you will also get. Since this is also coming at the same time with every spec in the game getting anything from a few minor talent changes to full-blown reworks, you have new class talents and spec talents separate from the Apex talents, making this whole thing so much more confusing, more complicated, to parse from the simple days of TBC or Wrath of the Lich King, when the tree was the same and you just got a new thing to play with. Apex talents are the closest that we have gone to that style of spec upgrade, since I cannot really count hero talents that way, because they just feel like their own separate thing and are not spec unique in that design. With that being said, I broke down the Apex talents into good, bad, and plain boring. The good talents
Ooh,
are
okay.
what can
We'll rank
universally be
them.
accepted as pure upgrades and improvements to the spec. One of the best examples is Discipline Priest. Whether you played the spec or not, you probably already know that the most iconic spell for the healer is Power Word Shield, that absorbs damage when it's placed on a player. The Apex Talent takes that mechanic and improves it in 3 major ways. First of all, it makes it stronger by being placed on 3 players at once instead of just 1, while also the shield being bigger. Second, it's fun, since it functions as a rotational proc that you need to react to. Being a bit RNG makes it unpredictable and offers moments of, "Oh, I got it, we good lads!" That feel that's really good when it procs, and it does proc quite often. At least enough to not let you feel like you are left out to dry, making it reliable. A very important
like a
feature
cool
for a
ability.
spell that is supposed to ensure survivability. And thirdly, it is themed around the expansion of Midnight as well as the flavor of the class. Power Word Shield upgrades into Void Shield, with a voidy animation when you cast it on people. Conclusion, Discipline Priest goes into Midnight and receives a new discipline mechanic.
That's cool. I kind of like that Blizzard's changing up the spell. You empower it with this, whatever, Apex talent, and then it becomes themed to the expansion, right? So it becomes voidy. That fits. Although it's kind of weird if you're like a holy priest, and then you got a voidy shield. That seems like blasphemous, but it's a cool concept.
That feels it belongs in the new story and new content that is impactful enough, where your gameplay objectively changes from moment to moment based on the functionality of this Apex talent mechanic. Overall, a big W for Discipline Priests. There are other specs like this, although not all, which receive
it's a
a cool
Discipline
new
Priest
mechanic
one.
or
Still seems weird.
a cool new spell that makes itself present in your gameplay, so you know that you have some cool new toys to play with. Unfortunately, not all specs are this lucky, and one of the best examples for the majority of Apex talents is Retribution Paladin, that received one of the most boring Apex talents possible that makes close to absolutely no difference in gameplay, decision making, even visual effects.
It's just a
It
proc.
has none of those good things that Void Shield brings for Discipline Priests, almost. It's called Light Within, and it affects your main passive proc called Art of War or Righteous Cause, whichever the talent you have, since both do the same thing, in that they reset the cooldown of your Blade of Justice, a core ability from your kit. The reset mechanic exists outside of the Apex talents, and Light Within increases the damage of the next Blade of Justice by 150%.
I think this could have been cool. The thing it's missing is a badass animation. Really, the animations make a difference. Like, if you got a really cool looking animation for a spell that maybe isn't that cool, it just makes it feel better. Something about a badass animation going with a spell just makes shit hit harder, makes you like the spell more, and it's also like it makes it feel like it's being used. You know, like you see it happen. You're like, oh, that's the thing I spec'd into. That's right. That thing's happening that I clicked. So that's probably why this thing sucks.
The damage is not as significant.
No real
course,
significance
no
to it. You don't know when it's happening.
Apex talents get for any spec in this situation, the damage is always there. But in your rotation, nothing actually changes.
Yeah,
you don't
the
get a
dopamines,
new
exactly.
proc. You don't even get more of the same proc, which wouldn't have been great either. The other node makes your finisher moves.
Like, one reason why I loved playing Fire Mage back in Legion, in Legion is, like, first of all, you got Phoenix Flames, which was badass. You know, you got the phoenixes flying out from under you. But then the Pyroblast kickoffs, now this was something that existed, but just became so often that you could proc it, where you get your instant Palm Pyroblast, you know, with the swirl of fire going around you. It wouldn't have been as cool if you didn't have that swirling fire animation every time you got an instant Pyroblast. But because of that, like you said, Banshee, it was an instant dopamine hit. It just felt so good to use it.
Stronger during your wings, and the last node adds a wave of light to your reset procs of Blade of Justice that at least adds an extra visual effect. But everything else just stays the same.
Gotta have a cool
Nothing
visual
in your
effect.
rotation will change, your talents and builds will not be impacted at all, and feels like Red drew a losing straw in the Apex talent discussion. And the sad part is that Red isn't the only spec in this situation. There are more examples of passive, boring Apex talents than actual good ones like Void Shield. I would have classified the likes of Red into a bad example of Apex talents if not for what happened to the rest of the specs in the game. Luckily, in this bad section there aren't many specs, but the fact that this mentality design still exists is problematic in itself. So what is it then? Let me tell you first the story of a tank I have wanted to play and tried to play since Legion that had more ups and downs than a rusty, suspicious roller coaster. Vengeance Demon Hunter was a tank that for the longest time has struggled becoming competitive in endgame content. Most people might only know Vengeance for the last 2 expansions for having a couple of very strong seasons, because when Vengeance actually was a competitive tank, it was by a very large margin, with the rest barely able to close the gap.
The problem with Vengeance is when it's good, when it's doing good, it also is just such a quick and mobile tank that nothing else competes with it. So it just takes the cake. Like right away, as soon as Vengeance is doing numbers that are competitive, it becomes the meta, and nothing else can hang with it, because it's just they dip and dash from group to group. You can just move through the entire dungeon so much quicker if there's a good Vengeance tank running it.
However, it had a long road to get to that point, and one of the
they wear assless leather chaps, of course.
best things it ever got that revitalized it was Demonic. This mechanic gave Vengeance the metamorphosis buff when it used Fell Devastation, turning it into the tanky demon we know, most of the time being its only defensive you would have to play around. Initially, Demonic was only for Havoc, and Vengeance had Gluttony, an RNG passive that gave you uncontrolled procs of Metamorphosis, and that was taken away in BFA, and as a result, on top of some other factors as well, Vengeance lost a lot of tankiness and competitiveness with other tanks, which changed in Shadowlands when Demonic was made available once again for the spec, and ever since and until now, it was a staple and locked-in mechanic without the like you wouldn't be able to actually survive endgame content whatsoever. And now we move into Midnight, where the spec has had some reworks going on. Since Devourer is also a new Demon Hunter spec, there had to be changes to the class tree, which held the Demonic talent, since Metamorphosis does not affect all of the Demon Hunter specs the same way. At least Devourer is very different in that regard. So Vengeance essentially lost access to Demonic completely. But not really, because now it is part of the Apex talents called Untethered Rage. Your Soul Cleave and Spirit Bomb have a chance to grant you a use of Metamorphosis based on how many soul fragments you consumed. So proc-wise is the same old Gluttony, where consuming souls gives you a chance to gain Metamorphosis. Instead of an uncontrolled proc, however, you get a cast of the spell to use when you actually need it and not having being wasted, which was a point in contention with the survivability mechanic that worked with
Why do you rank it bad? That sounds good.
Never a good thing. If anything, this is a much better implementation of Demonic than the old Gluttony, although it is still RNG similar to Void Shield. It procs often enough where you won't be cheated by the RNG gods, but then again, it's not tied to a predictable spell, which is what normally tanks want, RNG, and how Demonic has been working up until now. The main playstyle of Vengeance has been to rotate defensives over the years and always have one thing ready for when damage intake happens. You will have meta available often enough where you won't really be left with no defensives unless you just misplay your rotation. But let's not beat around the bush. This is not a new mechanic, not a new spell, or any new toy to work with. This style of design is a cheap and lazy way to repackage a spell or mechanic.
Yeah, it's a bit weird. I agree that J-Ball, that it's a way to use you can use it when you're in trouble, but it's weird because it's a predictable spell with RNG attached to it. So it's RNG to get the proc, but then the predictability comes in that you have a proc that you can use at the right moment. I think it's just the RNG part of it that feels weird about it.
And present it as a new content, which the devs...
Now, I just gave the example of Pyroblast. Obviously, getting a crit is an RNG kind of thing, but you can affect it, right? You can up your crit numbers so you get it more often. And then there were predictable factors to it, like using not a Scorch, what the hell was it called? Palm Blast or something like that. I forgot what that spell was called, but that was a guaranteed crit. So there were predictable ways to do it. Right, you could get one to proc every single time that you needed one, even though there was also an RNG aspect to it where the random procs could happen at any time too. That's how they should do this spell. It's okay to have some RNG, but you got to create one avenue of predictability too.
have been doing for years
Fire
on
Blast,
occasion,
yep.
and personally I was hoping that
That
Midnight
was a spell.
would be the start of a new chapter where we would get rid of these old ways of designing the game. Vengeance isn't the only spec that lost a mechanic from the talent tree, only to be put into the Apex and presented as a new expansion feature. Outlaw lost the whole playstyle in Crackshot, only to have a very simplified and less exciting version of it in the Apex talents. Other classes received old tier set bonuses instead. Having all of these isn't bad inherently, but they should have been a replacement for old or boring talents instead, and just keep the Apex talents new and exciting. I cannot help but feel cheated out of a new system because for whatever one of the 7 reasons the devs have, the spec has had to move a core feature or old mechanic into the new Apex system and call it new content.
Right.
And we end up in a familiar spot that always seems to happen with World of Warcraft, where the devs have an actual really interesting idea for cool new gameplay changes, class improvements and such, but never really applied them across the board, making a certain part of the community always feel like the losers of the bunch. The good Apex talents are actually really good and makes me excited to play and maybe even main those respective specs. The boring Apex talents are just pure disappointment that kills excitement and hope that whoever handles the respective specs knows how to take it into a fun direction, while the bad ones, they come at the cost of you losing something or having it repurposed, making it feel like a cheap way to get the same thing just with a different wrapping paper. How do you even draw a conclusion for this? If I was a Discipline Priest, Demonology Warlock, or Assassination Rogue,
then
I
you're
would
in a
be
good
super
spot.
excited for all these new talents. But what about the other players which might not even know how bad they have it, since a lot of people just never really stray from their spec to know what else is out there in the game, making it feel like a cheap way to give them Apex talents that are reworks of existing mechanics. Worse yet, if they do know that their spec got a really short end of a stick,
like Sam, I mean, yeah, I'm gonna play my Blood DK no matter what, right? I'm playing Blood DK, and I just pray and hope for the best. But if I end up with a shitty Apex talent, well, guess what? Your boy's still playing Blood DK. He's just going to play with a shitty Apex talent. Yeah, and there are a lot of people like me. There are a lot of single-class Andys out there. I know a lot of you guys in chat are like, oh, I got 36 alts and shit. But you're also watching, a person stream World of Warcraft on Twitch. So I would say you probably touch grass less than the average WoW player. You guys I wouldn't consider a part of the average WoW audience. You guys play this game probably a little bit more than most. So, to say that, just play an alt if you got a bad spec. Most people are just going to roll with the spec and class that they've been rolling with. And if it's bad, it's bad. If it's good, it's good.
Supposed to feel when a lot of other players got actual
Sam
toys
really
to
is
play
great
with,
from account.
while they just got a sweater to replace their existing sweater. By and large, I have to say that the Apex talents missed the mark with the caveat mentioned earlier. When they hit straight in the middle. But out of the 40 specs, there are likely only a handful that are in the center of the bullseye, while the rest are not even in the conversation. Where does Vengeance land in terms of fun? Ironically. Well, we just released a tier list ranking tanks based on how fun they are to play, with everything coming in Midnight, from reworks to Apex talents and tier sets. Check it out right here. Yeah, nice video overall.
Always use
thank you, HR Pinky, for the sub 2 months in a row. Death Knight of our Scourge. Thank you. I appreciate that. Nice video overall from Marcellian, and it totally makes sense. Like if you got an Apex talent that is kind of reworking things or has some really cool RNG, or again, as I said, some nice art or like animation that really makes you feel the Apex talent happening, then it's probably a good one. Otherwise, these really passive ones that are just like a stat buff, you don't even know when it's happening, and it's RNG based, yeah, that's shit. That's shit. So we'll see how these happen. Obviously, there's still time for some of this stuff to get reworked, but pre-patch is coming. And with pre-patch, we're going to get kind of all the class reworks that are happening and everything else, so we'll get a better feel for how a lot of this shit's going to play out. But overall, Apex, I just feel like it's all unnecessary. I don't know if we needed all this talent shit happening. But a nice video here from Marcellian.